All right. Looks like we're on. All right. Welcome, everybody. Let's see here. If you're tuned in live right now, go ahead and give me a thumbs up, a like, a heart. Let me know how the sound is out there, how the video is out there. As we get started here today. Okay, looks like we're on. How's it looking out there? All right. Let's see. I'm just gonna move the camera a little bit here. All right, that looks better. Thank you, Al. He said sound is okay.
Good old Al.
All right, good deal. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us on Sunday evening here on Hot Many Waters. Of course, we're on Facebook and we're on YouTube. And next to me, I have these two wonderful, beautiful, amazing people. You guys want to introduce yourselves? Say hi.
Hi, I'm Lesley.
Hello, I'm Joel.
Joel and Lesley, who also attend here at Church of Acts, also part of House of Many Waters. So I want to thank you for joining us. As you know, Pastor's not here today. Obviously, Ryan's not here, right? Ryan is still in Louisiana, so he wasn't able to make it, of course. And Pastor's out doing a church dedication that he was invited to go do like the ordination and things like that. So he asked us to come here today, right? And as many of y'all know, we've been kind of preparing and getting ready for a conference coming up, okay? Which is actually already next week. This week.
Yeah, this week.
This weekend coming up, okay? So October 8th, 9th, and 10th, okay? We're gonna have some very special guests coming all the way from California. We have Michael Dalton, who is an amazing speaker. I don't know if you got a chance to ever hear him speak in person.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
right when we went to
Amarillo.
Amarillo,
And then the conference
here.
and we had the conference here. Yes. So amazing speaker. This guy just carries such heavy revelation and insight and wisdom that is just amazing. And of course, we're also going to have Dub Alexander from Amarillo, who, I mean, man, in so many words, I mean, there's just so much you can say about him, who, awesome revelation, awesome understanding, the man that understands kingdom, but he knows how to multiply, right? He knows how to multiply, has an awesome, just community, of family of kingdom reformers, right? So that's going to be super amazing. And of course, Ryan, right, who is from the house, from Church of Acts, okay? And so many things we can say about Ryan as well, prophet to the nations. I mean, golly, we can just go on and the impact that he's made in our lives and just in the regions and several states and countries, and Ryan's been all over.
We're blessed.
Yeah, definitely. And so this weekend, Kingdom in the River City. It's going to be such a powerful conference. And one of the things that Pastor had asked us to do was to kind of just share and talk about what Kingdom in the River City is and what it means and what do we see or foresee that God's doing throughout the city.
Wow.
And so if you're in San Antonio, we definitely want everybody to join us. It's going to be, I believe, something that's going to be very impactful. I believe it's something that is history in the making. It's going to be something that's going to be monumental in the spirit. But I'm not saying that if you're not from San Antonio that it's not going to impact you, or it's not, it doesn't have an effect on you. It's not what I'm saying. So I don't want people to be like felt left out because they're coming from somewhere else. We definitely want everybody to come and to receive and take back whatever the Lord deposits, what He's doing. Whatever He ignites in you, whatever the Lord's deposited in you, take it back and continue to expand the kingdom. Because that's what it's all about. At the end of the day, it's about expanding God's kingdom. So we definitely want everybody to come and to receive. But I guess I'll go ahead and start with, shoot, where do I start? Kingdom in the River City. Man, there's so much I can share and talk about. But
How about, so I know when we had our conference, when was it like?
It's in March.
It was in March. When just hearing Ryan and Michael and Deb talk after, the conference, just bouncing things around, they were like, man, what we did this past weekend isn't over. There's something more. I remember that we maybe were going to title the conference Kingdom in the River City last time,
right,
but that got changed, and so there's a good kickoff.
yeah.
Why Kingdom in the River City?
Well, that's really a big thing. I want to say the origin of the name, if I could remember correctly, and how the idea of naming these conferences was by going to key cities where the kingdom was being presented, or it was being established, but also being presented. And there were several different cities, and they were going to be intentionally named Kingdom in whatever city it was in, right? We could have been Kingdom in San Antonio, but there was something very significant to San Antonio being called a river city, or being known as a river city, right? Even to the point when I ever hear of the word river city, I always think of the times when we've seen rivers flowing through here, right? When people have
Yes.
physically with their own eyes are like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna jump in, and they're doing dives into a river, right? At first, I remember back in like '90s, and then in the '90s, when we were like, what is going on? Like, what is that? People doing things that out of their own nature, out of their character, you would normally you wouldn't see them do that.
Yeah.
And then they're flopping on the floor or whatever. You're like, okay, God's doing something. You know what I mean? And so the origin was that there was going to be key cities that were going to be presented at wherever we felt that there was an assignment that the Lord had, right? And so of course with Ryan, Dub, and Michael, I mean, you get them three together, dude, and it's just overload.
Mm-hmm.
It's just overload. They're so in tune with what God's releasing, and what God's doing, and them three together, man, it's just a well of river and flow that just comes out.
Yeah.
Anything you'd like to share?
One of the words that I keep hearing going back to the conference in March, the word that I kept hearing then was awakening. And I think even that it applies now still, because I do think there is an awakening that's taking place. Almost like, I don't want to make it seem like as if we've already arrived. We're already awake, but we're in the process of being awakened. And like the Lord is doing something fresh, doing something new, and so for me, that's just the word that I've kept on hearing is awakening.
Yeah.
And it's been a screensaver on my phone for quite some time, or since going back to this past March. And so for me personally, what I've been feeling in the spirit is there is an awakening, something new, almost like a birthing that's taking place in the spirit. And so, for San Antonio, I feel like this is, this isn't just for one church, for one body.
Right.
This is an awakening for the region.
Yeah.
Now, granted, it may be starting here per se, with Michael, Dub, and Ryan and Pastor, and the messages coming from this church, but it's not ending here, right? This is just the well where the water's going to perhaps be coming from and starting, but it's going to be flooding and going everywhere. So the word that I'm hearing is just awakening, and it's no coincidence that we are in the River City, and this is happening here, that these wells are being uncapped, and this water is flowing from this place, because to me it just all correlates, and nothing happens by accident.
Yeah.
So the fact that we're in the River City and
Yeah.
there's waters that are just flowing and rushing, and that we can all draw from. I mean, to me, it's just God being God, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. No, that's good. And what that reminds me of when I ever hear of like the River City or the rivers, especially with what God's doing, I always think of Ezekiel 47, where the river that was coming out from the temple, right? And the Bible says that the river, that as it was flowing and everywhere that it went, that on both sides of the river, or everything that the river touched, the trees were huge and big and healthy, and everything that the river touched was getting healed, right? And that the river, if I remember, in the river there was lots of fish and a lot of livelihood, everywhere that the river went. And so being that we're in River City, and not coincidentally that this is House of Many Waters, right? That there's something in the spirit that the Lord's doing. And sometimes we hesitate to take hold of what God is saying, because you don't want to sound prideful, or you don't want to sound like, but there's a pioneering that's taking place. And I have to state claim of that. There's a pioneering that's taking place. There's forerunners that God has released, and we got to acknowledge it for who they are and what's happening. In order for what God is doing to be manifested, to be embraced, to be acknowledged. As a matter of fact, I think there's people that have been waiting. They've been waiting for such a move, where people have already gotten tired of the same old, the everyday. Man, it's Monday, right? Like the thing is that there's an excitement, in people's spirit, there's an awareness that something is taking place. You know what I'm saying? The best way I could describe it, when I see it happening, it's like when Mary approached Elizabeth, right? And Elizabeth is close to already her 9th month, right? And when Mary walks up to her, and the moment that Elizabeth heard her voice, the Bible says that the baby in her jumped, right? Like it leaped. And I feel like there's a lot of people right now that they're hearing what's the voice and it's being declared, and something inside of them is leaping.
That's good.
You know what I'm saying? Like there's something that says like, that's what I'm waiting for. That's what we're looking for. That's what we need. It's about time this thing's gonna be birthed out, right? And so with what the Lord is doing here, and like we said, like we don't want to make it sound like it's only a San Antonio thing,
right?
But I do want to say that what God is doing here is something special. Okay, it's something amazing. I wanna acknowledge it. I wanna honor it. I want to present it with, what's the word I'm looking for? Like just that I want to acknowledge it, knowing that presenting as God's doing something. You know what I'm saying? The Lord's doing something. Man, I don't know. There's a lot going on that I'm seeing.
Well, I mean, this was something that was spoken over this ministry, many years ago, that the Lord was going to use this as a prototype.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Of just of a the Church of Acts was going to be a prototype, and all these years, I'm not saying that pastors labored, but just in watering the seed that was spoken over this ministry.
That's good.
So it's not a pride thing.
Right.
It's a thing that something was birthed. When a woman gives birth to her child, and the child grows and begins to mature and begins to do things that are, you're proud, or you see the reward in what you've sown or what you've brought forth. And being the river city, like you said, the river coming out of the throne. I mean, I just saw that right away as, the River City is like that. The river coming out of the, and it's going, and because it's not just for Church of Acts.
Right.
It's over the whole city.
Yeah.
And the history of the city has a lot to do with that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm glad you brought that up. I think a lot of times there's certain things, and I'm going to speak also for like leaders throughout the city. So what I want to share is not just I want to share something for individuals, but also leaders, because a lot of times there's a lot of frustration that comes when there's something you want to see produced, but it doesn't happen, right? And so for a long time, I understand the intent and the drive and the zeal and the heart for God, that you want to see your city change, you want to see your city being impacted. You want to, I've been in meetings where like we're just gonna gather together and pray as leaders and pastors, and we're gonna gather together and we're just gonna seek the Lord for the city, right? And with good heart and good intention, I see that. And it seems like there's a call for unity, a call for this and a call for that, and I get it. I completely get it. But then there comes a frustration when you don't see the things manifested that you wish to declare or that you want to see and what you're praying and believing for, right? And I just feel like sometimes there's Zechariah moments where the Lord closes the lips and can't say anything until you know what to name this thing. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I feel like there's been a silence in leadership, as a whole. I'm not talking about individuals or individual ministries or nothing like that. I'm just saying, as in general, like there's been a silence because we don't know what to name this thing that God is producing, right? And now we're getting to this point where God's going to release the words, the lips, the mouth, because now God's going to name it. Mm-hmm. This is what you should call it, because a name gives it its function. And that's very important. The name is going to give this thing its identity and its function, its purpose, and what it should do and what it should accomplish. You know what I mean? And so several years back, as we had attended a leaders meeting, a leaders gathering, or it was prayer for the city and things like that. Like I said, it was good heart, good intention, good things. But I've always heard, like, when leaders spoke over the city of San Antonio, they always said, we need to come against this religious spirit that's over San Antonio. And that never really settled in my spirit right. Like, there was something that was just uncomfortable about, saying, like, hey, let's come against the spirit of religion that's over San Antonio and this and that. It's a very religious city. And which I understood the heart. I'm not complaining about the heart. But then the Lord asked me one day, he says, do you want to see what I see for the city? And obviously you're like, yes. What is it that you see over the city that we should be calling it, right? And it's one thing to learn history, and it's a weird way to describe it, because it's one thing to learn history, but it was like when the Lord started to give me understanding about San Antonio, he not only had me read and study about it, but it was like he was taking me to the time period. And I could physically be there and sense things and feel things. And I could hear words, and I could feel the air, and I could feel what was taking place, and I could feel the emotions of the people that were there. And it changed how I saw San Antonio. And I'll start by saying that, but first, okay, honor is a currency of the kingdom, right? Honor is a currency in the kingdom. And you want to see the kingdom move, you want to see the kingdom established, walk in honor. There is so much that happens when people walk in honor, right? Like it's funny because like one of the 10 commandments was like honor your mother and father, right? So when Jesus' first miracle was by who? It was initiated by his mom. He was like, it's not time yet. She's like, hey, right? And he was like, you know what? I'm going to bring honor to my mom, right? And he honored his mother. So there was this, and there's this thing about honor that unlocks things that are that in the kingdom, right? And so bringing honor, just the way that we bring honor to Ryan, or we bring honor to Dub and Michael, and you bring honor to whoever it is that you acknowledge as someone that is that you have regard for, right? T.D. Jakes, Billy Graham, Samuel Rodriguez, Bob Jones. You name all these people that you honor, right? And so when the Lord started talking to me about San Antonio, it was a few years back, probably about 3-4 years. He asked me, where did San Antonio come from? So I started to search, right? And I want to introduce you to a man. His name is Fernando. And Fernando was a young guy. He only lived to be 35, so he was very young. He's very young, 35 years old. But Fernando, at an early age, at the age of like 15, he got really serious about studying the Word. Like, he just loved God. He loved the Scriptures. He loved the Word. He loved preaching the Word. He loved teaching the Word. And at the age of 17, he started really, really going after theology and learning Latin, right? Like, I've never learned Latin and Greek and all that. But he started to learn other languages. And when this guy would preach, like, heaven would back him up. Heaven will back up this young guy. And miracles, signs, and wonders that this guy would walk in, right? Healings that this guy would walk in. Kind of like how we talk about, you talk about Smith Wigglesworth and, John G. Lake, William Branham, like all these amazing, men. Well, Fernando was like that. Okay. But later, Fernando, he changed his name to Anthony because there was somebody that he honored and he valued. And he wanted to take on that honor and reverence. So he went from Fernando to Anthony. Okay. Well, Anthony, back in his day when he lived, which was back in the late 1100s, early 1200s. Okay. In their day, this is what the Lord had took me back to understand the religious culture of their time. And I started to appreciate his heart and his love for God and expression for God in the way that he knew how under their religious structure. Do you understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I wasn't judging the structure. I was loving the man's heart and his desire and zeal for how much he loved the Lord. I remember the Lord told me, he's like, he wasn't only my son, but he was also my servant. Like, it's one thing to be the son of God, right? Like, you have a son in your relationship with the Lord, but when you take that sonship and you go out and serve and do things to impact the kingdom, like the Lord was very proud of this young man. Like, he's my son, but man, look, he's also my servant. Yeah. And I could see him going to cities and everywhere, just traveling and, really impacting and manifesting the kingdom where he went. And we have the privilege, the honor, and the blessing to live on this side of the Protestant Reformation. If we know church history in the 1500s, right, Martin Luther, we live on this side of when the Protestant Reformation was breaking away from the Catholic hierarchy and that kind of religious structure. So we live on this side. But if you go before the 1500s and you go all the way to the 1200s, that's all you knew. That's all you knew. You weren't exposed to anything else outside of that. So under that structure and under that understanding, you loved the Lord and you did what you could with what you knew. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. So I started to appreciate who he was and what he was doing. So Anthony, like I said, he died at the age of 35, so he was very young. But within a year later, I mean, this guy was teaching at universities and seminaries and theological schools. right? It would be like, oh, Robert's starting a school. You know what I mean? And so he was very, very influential. Like I said, he loved the scriptures. He walked in revelation. There was times when they were like, who's going to teach? And they're like, I don't know, call Anthony. And Anthony would be like, all right, cool. Let me pray about it, and I'll be there in 10 minutes. And he would walk and he would just share, and just like just revelation would just come, and then the manifestation would show up,
Wow.
right? And so he became like a priest, and he became a teacher at a university at, like I said, a very young age. And he was very influential. When he died at 35 years old, within a year later, the Catholic Church canonized him as a saint. Okay? Now, what the Lord had to show me, because I was like, Lord, I don't want to make it seem like I'm, saying like, oh, we're going to worship a saint and stuff like that. He's like, no, he never asked for that. He never asked for that. He loved the Lord, and he did what the Lord asked him to do. And he was led by the Spirit, right? But he never asked to be canonized. He never asked to be a saint or nothing like that. But the people had valued him so much, and that was their way of bringing honor. Again, this is their structure. This is their time frame. This is the environment that this is all they knew. Yeah. So in them bringing honor, that was like the ultimate highest way of bringing honor. And so they made him a saint within a year later, or probably within like 10, 11 months. Wow. Which is the second fastest. I was going to say, it usually takes a long process. It takes a long time. It's a long process. And so I think the fastest one was like 8 months, and then his was 11 months. So he was the second fastest to be canonized as a saint. And so that's why, so his name is Saint Anthony. Okay? Mm. And he died in 1231, something like that. And so when the Lord allowed me to see his son, a man named Anthony, who he loved the Lord, and he just wanted to see God's kingdom established. When I saw him like that, my heart was turned, because it wasn't just a religious spirit. This was a man that was walking. Yeah. It's like saying like this was, like David, right? A man after God's heart. And we're like, oh, we love David, we love Moses, we love, And so that's who he was. And later, back in like 1940, probably about 50, 60 years ago, he was in the Catholic tradition, he was made a doctor of the church, which throughout Catholic church history, there's only 36 of them. Okay? There's only 36. And you think about the Catholic church history, there's only 36. And he's, I think, number 29 or something like that. Wow. And usually when people are considered like a doctor of the church in the Catholic sense, it's because they made a significant impact in theology or doctrine and things like that. So he was, considered a doctor. But I'm saying that to say like there was honor that was being brought to him in their way of acknowledging it. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so when I started to see past the Catholic hierarchy or the Catholic sense, and I started to see from God's perspective and from the kingdom, I started to like man, like this was just the way we look at William Branham or mm-hmm. Bob Jones. I was like, man, this guy made a significant impact. Like it was pretty powerful. And so in 1691, that was when they actually named where the river is at, right? There's a lot of history in San Antonio. But there was a small little community of Indians that had made their village along the San Antonio River. And when they came on the missions, right, because they were establishing the missions, they came to that small village, and the river was there, and that's when our father and a governor from Spain, together, so you have a religious leader and you have a government official. together declared that this would be named San Antonio,
Wow.
which is Saint Anthony,
Yeah.
right? And it was named after that Anthony that they were bringing honor to.
Yeah.
Again, in their historical background, in the best way that they knew how to bring honor, that's what they were doing. And so that's where the name of San Antonio comes from Saint Anthony, who, again, if you take off just the whole sainthood and honor the man, the individual that loved God, established the kingdom, and kingdom would back him up in miracles, signs, and wonders. You know what I mean? It would be the same as saying, like, as I was saying earlier, like, I'm moving to Texas. Where are you moving to? Well, I'm going to move to Miles Monroe, Texas. You understand what I'm saying? The impact, because you know that somebody made a significant impact and a contribution to the kingdom, right? Or I'm moving to Billy Graham, Texas, right? I'm moving to T.D. Jakes, Texas. You know what I'm saying? In a way where you're trying to bring honor to somebody. And so that's what was taking place in 1691 when it was named. But the official city itself was not established until 27 years later, which was like 1720 something, 23? Can't remember. I want to say 1723, when it was officially established as a city, as an official city, that they made it a public land, that this place was going to be called San Antonio. So the name came in 1691, but 23 years later, it was established as an official city.
Wow.
And so San Antonio has a rich spiritual significance that is rooted in God, you know? And so I feel that, with all that being said, that there is, if we could just acknowledge the individual and honor him as a man that loved God, not as a saint. I'm not saying like, okay, let's build statues. It's not what I'm talking about. You understand what I mean? But just, it's kind of like how the people of Israel would acknowledge like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You know what I'm saying? Just bringing honor. And so San Antonio is not a religious city. And San Antonio is not, and I'm going to declare this, I'm going to speak this over the city, that San Antonio is not a city that is boggled down by a religious spirit.
Can you share, for just those that are maybe online, that when you say religious spirit or bound by religion, what does that mean?
Yeah, good question. Whenever the term like religious or religious spirit, it's the best way that I've heard it described is like religious activity, but not having any power behind it, or any religious activity that I do in my efforts to try to get approval or to try to get some kind of to try to get God to move or to be accepted. Any religious activity out of my own efforts is religion, right? So I've always, like I said, I've always heard people say like, oh, the city of San Antonio has this religious spirit over it and this and that, right? And you're talking about people that have callings and anointings over their life, you know? And whenever that kind of language is used, coming from your lips, and you're claiming something over a city or region, oh, it's just a religious spirit and this and that, you're like, what are you adding to it? You understand what I'm saying? And so I believe that as we turn that around over our city, and we turn people's understanding and their perspective about the city, that, okay, let's get away from our self-righteousness, that we have it together. And back then, it's just, you know, they didn't know what they're doing by sainthood and Catholicism. Like, let's get past that, and let's acknowledge, you know, a man that walked with God. He loved the Lord, and heaven backed him up. You know, as a matter of fact, I think he actually wrote a book, and you're talking about the 1200s, 1100s, and he wrote a book called seek the kingdom first.
Wow.
You know,
cool.
dude, like this man was like somebody that loved the Lord, and they acknowledge him as a doctor, as a expert and teacher of theology. You know, man, y'all can interrupt me. I'm just babbling on.
Oh, that's okay.
So San Antonio has a lot of richness and spiritual inheritance, you know, and it's kind of like one of those things where like the earth is waiting, right, to speak those things that are not as if they are. Like, let's call it for what it really is, and it's kind of like the passage where it says like, go and dig up Abraham's wells, right? Let's go back and dig up what was meant to be, right? Because the well, what was the well? It was where water was a reservoir, right? It was where water would people come and get the water from. Water is necessary for livelihood, and those wells were stocked up. Those were blocked, right? And so now we have an opportunity to go back and let's redig, you know, the wells that have been blocked for so long, you know. I've even heard like, you know, Bob Jones and like Randy DeMaine, Jeff Jansen, all these other prophetic voices, where they talked about some angels that have been released across the nation, across the U.S. And anything you guys want to share that before I kind of like transition into that?
I was just going to mention, you know, as you were sharing, one of the things that I kept hearing is something we've heard a lot here, you know, recently. And for me personally, it's been just like a paradigm shift in the way I see, the way I walk, the way, you know, I started praying, probably maybe not quite a year, but about a year, give or take. And it's, you know, what are you magnifying, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, what are you concentrating on? What are you focusing on? And it's so easy to magnify what is evident, you know, like if you know, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank right now, but when God, it was a Jeremiah, he asked, you know, can these bones live? You know, was it Jeremiah? I'm sorry, Ezekiel, I'm sorry, thank you.
Ezekiel 37.
You know, what do you see, Ezekiel? I mean, it'd be so easy for us to see, well, I see a valley of dry bones, you know, and when we're so used to just, I think in today's world especially, we're so used to calling things out for what they are. You know, I see someone who's this, I see someone who's that. And the whole time the Lord is saying, I'm asking you what you see because I want to know, or I want you to understand you're not necessarily seeing what I'm seeing.
Right.
You know? Yeah. And so over the past, like I said, you know, a year, give or take, man, it's really the messages that we've been hearing here from the pulpit, from guys like Dub, from Michael. It's really caused me to transition, or the Lord has really used this time to transition the way I see, the way I'm thinking. And so it's been a paradigm shift, you know, to say the least. And so as you're sharing these things, you know, it's so easy for people to say, well, there's a religious spirit there.
Right.
You know, well, there's, you know, the spirit of religion, it's a stronghold. Okay, well, thank you, Captain Obvious. You know, like, why are we stating the obvious? You know, what is God saying, though?
Right.
God is aware of what's there, obviously, but what is God actually speaking? What is God's word speaking over that city, over that individual? You know, so like when you were sharing about when Mary walked in and Elizabeth heard her voice, you know, something leaped. I feel like there's been a leaping in the hearts of men now versus, you know, maybe 12 months ago, because the message is changing. So so the good news is actually now being presented, you know, of righteousness consciousness. You know, Holy Spirit is here to convict you of your righteousness, not of your sin. You know, so for me personally, it was like, holy cow. I mean, I grew up in this, you know, Holy Spirit is here to convict you of your sin, your sin, your sin. So I was constantly walking with the shame, shame, shame. And now over the last several months, it's been like, are you kidding me? Like this whole time I've been aware, I've been reminding myself of my sin and shame that's been bringing shame. And the whole time the Holy Spirit is telling me, hey, you're righteous in my eyes. You know, you're righteous because I made you righteous. That's so the leaping that I feel that the people in the area and the region are feeling is that because this is the good news.
That's right.
This is the good news that's coming.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyway, that's one thing I was hearing right now.
That's
I
good.
love that. I mean, the good news, I remember sharing with Ruben, like when we, I mean, we've been in this process for,
Mhm.
a while. I don't know how many years already, but
Yeah.
we've been in this process. I wouldn't say that, oh, we're so familiar with it that we're just like, oh yeah, yes, praise the Lord, another, whatever. But like with the three of us being in Dub's School of Kingdom, I realize we are really blessed because, you and Ryan get on the, behind the teaching camera, and people are commenting like, oh my goodness, and totally blown away, and I've never, what a revelation. And then they're still, even after the class, days later, still commenting like, oh my, the Lord is still, and, we don't realize how blessed we are.
Yeah.
We've been in this process, but when it just started to hit me a little bit more, I told Ruben, this is where the freedom is.
Yeah.
I mean, this that we're hearing is really good news. This is the stuff that, I mean, I was never a big evangelistic kind of person. Go out and, share the Lord, or, go this person, or, whatever. I would never like that. I'm not a very social person anyway. But, I told Ruben, this stuff that we're hearing, this stuff brings freedom.
Yep.
You can go to a stranger on the street and say, I've got something for you, and this is really, it really is good news. And it's the beautiful message of the kingdom.
That's right. That's right. I had a conversation with someone one time, and they're, very evangelistic, very, let's go save souls, and hey, brother, you're going to hell. If you were to die today, where would you go? That kind of very driven with that. And, one day I asked him, I said, look, can we evangelize without mentioning hell, without mentioning the rapture, without mentioning sin, without mentioning, tribulation, without mentioning where you're going to go? Like, can you still evangelize? And he was like, man, well, it kind of like it takes away all your ammunition, right? So then, what message are you going to evangelize with?
Yeah. If you take all that away, how are you going to scare people?
Right? It's
people into
pretty
heaven.
difficult.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be the good news. You know what I
Yes.
mean? And I remember one time the Lord asked me one time. He says, "Do you know what evangelism is?" Oh no, he said, "Do you want to know what evangelism is?" The way I define evangelism, and I was like, "Yeah." How do you define it, Lord? And he said, "Evangelism is not about bringing people in. Evangelism is about bringing people close to Him."
Yeah.
So if you go to work and you're like, "Oh man, I was evangelizing, and I invited them to church," and it's like, then we missed it. Did they get closer?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, they get closer.
Yeah.
That's what evangelism is about. You know what I mean? It's not about just trying to get people to come to church, have a seat, and listen. That's not what evangelism is about.
Well, when Jesus was going out, he never said, "Oh, let's do this first." He told the lady, "Go,
Yeah.
and sin no more." And in that, she went to her community and brought her community together.
Yeah.
Jesus never said, come to my church and I'll pray for you. No, he took the good news, the kingdom, and he where he was, everywhere he was.
Yeah. And so we're in good times, man. Like, it's very I feel it's very monumental where we're at right now in church history, in kingdom history. Let me put it like that. In kingdom history, what God is establishing. And as I was mentioning earlier, I kind of like mentioned it, but there had been some prophetic words of certain angels that have been released over the U.S. And they had specific assignments to start awakening.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I know that people use the term revival, and whenever you throw out the term revival, you get 10 different pastors, and they're all gonna have 10 different meanings, or defining revival differently, right? And to me, revival is just bringing back to life something that was already dead. But in order for somebody to experience revival, meant that there was life already before. right? It's not a thing of like, oh, I got the goosebumps and oh, I can't wait, and we're gonna have a revival week. Like, no, it's revival is just it's a manifestation of God's kingdom.
Yeah.
You experience revival every day.
Yeah. We've been revived.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know what I mean. It's what you live in. Like, it's not an event. It's not
an occurrence. Yeah.
right. You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, get ready because we're gonna have revival in 2 months, and you're like, okay, you know what I'm saying? Like, kingdom's now. But and so another word, what I'm trying to say is like awakening. I think is a better word for just saying like, oh, we're gonna have revival. Like, no, like we're experiencing an awakening. Like, there's something that's taking place. And so these angels, that there's 5 specific, and there's 5 major highways throughout the U.S. And one of the highways is I-10. And so in this prophetic word, they had seen an angel that was assigned to I-10, and this angel was assigned on I-10, but I-10, it went all the way to Jacksonville, Florida, right? Went through Tallahassee, and it comes all the way through, right? I think even through Alabama and through Louisiana, it comes down. But then it also comes through Houston, and then, of course, to San Antonio, goes up through, I think it's New Mexico or Phoenix. Yeah, like Arizona, and then all the way to California, right? And so they saw this angel from Jacksonville, Florida, going up and down I-10 all the way to LA in California. Okay.
Wow.
And this angel was just going back and forth. And awakening, there was an invitation for awakening. And those that were responding to the awakening that was taking place, the Lord was having breakthrough, because that's another angel that I don't know if you know the story of breakthrough. The angel of breakthrough was an angel that was assigned to Nigeria, to a man by the name of Benson Adahosa, if I can say that correctly. Adahosa. Benson Adahosa. And Benson Adahosa, if you ever study his life and history, man, this guy was powerful, But there was an angel that was assigned to his assignment. And this angel breakthrough would go before and start breaking tough territory, that when the kingdom was preached, people were gravitating to it, right? And so I want to say it was Randy Domain that went to Nigeria for a conference. And while he was there at the hotel, the angel came to him, and he was asking the Lord, who is this angel? And the Lord begins to tell him, this is angel breakthrough. And I've assigned him to go with you to the United States, to go back to the U.S. This is the angel that's been in Nigeria, and he was assigned to Benson Adahosa. And Randy was like, well, I don't want to take him if he's assigned here. And he says, no, you don't get it. His assignment's already done. Yeah. What he was assigned to do has already been accomplished. So now I'm sending him with you to the U.S.
Wow.
And so ever since, angel breakthrough would show up at key pivotal moments, right? And of course, Ryan has encountered him. We've had angel breakthrough come through several times. I've experienced angel breakthrough one time, and the way I saw him was I saw a yellow bulldozer come through that wall. That's the way, and I was like, Lord, what is that? He says, that's angel breakthrough. Wow. And I was like, okay. But that's the way the Lord told me that the angel was going to be here. I'm not saying he's a yellow bulldozer, but that's just the way the Lord communicated to me. Angel hit, Ryan has the angel manifested how he feels something differently around his arm. And so angel breakthrough has been assigned to the U.S. along with those 5 angels that are assigned to certain highways throughout the U.S. I can't remember the other 4 of the highways that were listed, but I know that I-10 was one of the significant ones that had been listed. So, and of course, I mean, I'm not saying that Church of Acts is it and this is the only place. It's not what I'm saying, but we are responding to the invitation. Yeah. Right? Pastor has made the room for us to respond to the invitation, right? The invitation has been delivered. Not everybody will respond to it,
I think even this morning, I heard him, I think it was this morning, and then I heard him on Wednesday night that he says, I just said yes.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, God, so much that we're honored. It's a privilege to be in this house. It's a privilege to be in this time. It's a privilege to be in the region. And I just believe that there's going to be voices that are going to be raised up throughout different cities. As a matter of fact, I even see people right now that are involved in government or city, that God is giving you a position, an influence to be a voice. Of course, with that, He's going to give you wisdom on how to share, when to share, how to go about it, how to. I even see like strategic. I'm trying to find the language to what I'm saying. There's going to be strategic moves that are going to take place in your workplace. There's even strategic relationships, and I'm talking specifically about government. There's a thing where God is marrying, and I don't want to use the word church because it's not just like, oh, just pastors and governors or pastors and government leaders. It's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the people are gonna partner in governmental influence, but also in the church community, in the ecclesia, in the kingdom family, are gonna partner together, right, to bring manifestation of the kingdom in different ways. Man,
I'm glad you said that, man, because I'm just right before you said that, a couple of minutes before that, I was feeling, I guess, that there are people like in city councils, like in government, city governments, that are kind of torn because they believe one way, that their city government is wanting to go a different way.
Wow.
And they're like, how do I, be this light, this influence to my leadership when the Lord is telling me this in my spirit, but my boss is telling me this, in the natural, in the flesh.
Yeah.
And so I just pray for those individuals that the Lord is just going to start to give you favor and just freedom to speak what the Lord has given you, and start to influence your leadership, and that your leadership will be influenced by the Holy Spirit and not by situations and circumstances going on in whether it's government, city, what have you. Yeah. But that I just declare and decree favor in your arena.
Yeah. Yeah. As you were saying that, I saw like, the Bible talks about where Jesus, He grew in favor and wisdom, right? Remember when Jesus, when Mary and Joseph forgot Him, he got lost, right? I mean, he didn't get lost, but they left Him, and he was talking to the other leaders and stuff. But the Bible says that He grew in wisdom and stature, right, with God and man. Yeah. Right, so I'm declaring that the favor and the wisdom, that there would be an increase in God, right? Because that's where it starts. But it would also be manifested with man, right?
And attached to that, I just wanted to say boldness too.
Yeah.
The church also needs to become more bold in our declarations, and more bold in sharing, our convictions. So I just declare and attach boldness to that also.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things I also saw too was attached to the government, there's also the education system. So I started to see like superintendents, school officials, people of high influence in the education system. And this is what I wanna bring clarity to. Because I've heard people kind of say like, oh, I don't, they talk negative or something bad about the education system, which I get it, right? I get it. But let's not confuse the education system with educational teachers, right? Because sometimes as teachers, they kind of feel that stigma of like, oh, well, the education system, and they're like, but that's not me. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And so we have to separate individuals to systems, right? And so there's government that is attached to educational systems that I feel that they're going to be educational systems, God is going to release people, individuals, into systems where these individuals are going to begin to turn things around, in the educational system. So it's not for us to bash or separate ourselves from the education system, but for us to infiltrate, for us to get in there, right? And so I'm seeing that as we're talking. I saw the government, right, like officials and these voices of influence, but I saw superintendents that were finding their freedom. They were finding their freedom. They were being loosened from fear, fear of punishment, fear of retaliation, fear of losing, fear of like, I worked so many years to accomplish this, and what's going to happen now. So I just see that the Lord is releasing that kind of fear from people's hearts, and what that says to me too is that heaven has backup. Like, you have backup, and heaven is backing you up. So with that boldness is the fact that you're knowing that, okay, Daddy has my back. You know what I mean? Daddy has my back. Anything you feel like you want to share? You good?
Good.
Oh man. So Kingdom in the River City.
Kingdom in the River City.
Right? There's going to be a lot that's going to be shared. I don't know how else to say it, but man, just get ready. I don't know how long we've been on here.
No idea.
Okay.
A little less than an hour.
All right. Well, good deal. Well, we know also that Brandon and Earl are going to be here too. So
It's never a dull moment.
never. That's right. If Brandon's watching this, he's probably laughing. Oh no, he's on vacation.
No,
But
they're watching.
are they? All right. We love you, Brandon and Irma. But of course, when they're in the house, man, they see things, experience things, amazing stories. I can go on telling you different stories of, Brandon and being part of the youth group and all, and all that.
I've heard some of those stories.
Yeah, man, it's been,
It's good stuff.
it stretches you, right? That's what the kingdom is all about. It's about us wrapping our mind around what God's doing.
I want people to come because it's not just another conference, just not another gathering. Like you were saying, we're going to have revival this week or these next few days. It's not just a thing that we're going to have because we needed to have a thing. We didn't really need to have a thing, of any kind for any particular reason. I really believe this is a God-ordained conference, and the good Father is being introduced, you know what I mean? And to a lot of people for the very first time.
Yeah.
And so, man, I want people to come and get to know the good Father, get to know this good Father, because there's so many people out in the world. And I know, for speaking for myself, growing up in a, I guess, for lack of a better word, a religious background, I grew up in that, but there were still people growing up in that today, or who've been living in that lifestyle, with a mainline denominational church. And so a lot of the messages they've heard, the majority of their lives have been, an angry dad, an angry God. Yeah. So I want people to come to experience freedom, to be loosed by this angry God theology, and experience the good Father, man. He is such a good Father. And so for me, again, just going back to what I've experiencing over these last several months, it's been that. It's just been like this paradigm shift that's like, wow, I mean, he is so good. Yeah. So that's what I want people to really come and experience for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, I mean, just in the response that we see, I mean, it's going to be broadcasted, and that's amazing too, but just in the past few months, or the past couple of years, since COVID, after COVID, that we've been seeing a lot of new faces all of a sudden. It seemed like for so many years it was just the same people. Now we're seeing so many new faces, and just seeing the response to the word that's being released here. Yeah. It's amazing, and it's just, it's a spark off of one person, and it hits the other. And I mean, just the community and the unity together in the atmosphere, it's just a charge. And it's just being in your Father's presence together. It's like a family reunion. Yeah. It's a great time. It's a blast when we love each other. and you feel all of that, and you have all of that in the atmosphere together.
Yeah.
So I just encourage people to come, because it's going to be, it's an appointed moment.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
not just another conference. It's an it really is an appointed moment.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I definitely feel the weightiness of what God's doing. Like I said last time, when I was pastor here, it's one thing when you're on one side and you're cheering and you're like, yes, Lord. But then when you see him, when you see God on the throne and he's cheering and he's like, yes, like that, like, oh my God, God is cheering us on.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's something that not only are we excited about, and I guess the excitement, it comes from the daddy, like it comes from daddy, like because he's excited. We feel that excitement of what's happening, you know? And so there's going to be so much that's going to happen in the conference. Again, it's going to be October 8th, 9th, and 10th, which is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday coming up. Okay. It's
Friday evening,
Yes.
Saturday morning,
That's right.
Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, and then Sunday morning.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay.
That's right. That's right. And it's free, right? Just kind of show up. But the only thing that we're asking is just for people to register. Okay, just go online, kingdomrivercity.com, and register, just so we can make sure that we have enough room and space and
Sure.
accommodation and things like that. We want to try to make sure we everybody's comfortable, right? But I guess if you're really hungry, you can sit on, Indian style in the front, like what?
Yeah.
You can just tie dub shoes. But no, we just ask, we just register, and just come ready, man.
Yeah.
Just come ready. Like that's one of the things I've always learned is that God always responds to hunger, and if you come hungry, you won't be disappointed.
Amen.
Be fed.
You will, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's what, like, God always feeds his children. It's just like
Yes.
that, right? He always feeds his children. So just come hungry, come ready. And if you could share this broadcast with friends and family, again, San Antonio is not bound by a religious spirit. When you walk with eyes of honor, it'll change your impact and the influence you have over your city,
Amen.
right? You can only have authority over the things that you love, is what we heard Ryan say one time,
Yeah.
right? The things that you want to have an impact and influence over, without love,
Yeah.
you don't have it.
Yeah.
So if you love something, you're not going to label it as something, And so love for our city, and that's for any city, wherever you're at, the love that you have for your city will determine the influence that you have. Amen. So welcome to San Antonio. Welcome to Church of Acts, House of Many Waters, and come join us. All right. So we'll see you
Getting
next time.
excited.
We love you guys, and don't forget to share and register. We love you. And I got to run over there to do the exit.
Good job, guys.
All right. See you later on.